Welcome back, and many thanks for joining us. You're still watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. As always, don't forget to connect with us on StarTimes DTH Channel 421, and do well to head to our social media platforms to check out some more from our live feed, especially our YouTube channel, where we urge you to subscribe for more. Well, it's Political Spectrum, where we're mirroring the day's biggest political news stories and events, and later on in the program we'll try to ascertain reasons why state houses of assemblies have rejected moves to have the local government autonomy bill passed into law. Well, this is the claims made by the National Assembly, who said opposition to the bill over the years have stably. The day's biggest story is coming from the controversy surrounding the just concluded rerun elections in Adamawa State. We're following the March 18 exercise, which took place concurrently alongside 27 other states. INEC announced the Adamawa gubernatorial election smoothly, as was the expectations of the interested parties and the neutrals, and also saw a commencement of the coalition exercise, which would have led to a formal announcement of who was victorious at the polls. While coalition was suspended for 9 p.m. many, there was an alleged usurpation of roles and powers provided by Constitution or the Electoral Act as the resident electoral commissioner in the election when the coalition exercise wasn't concluded. Interestingly, at the last count, it was the PDP candidate and incumbent Governor Ahmadu Fintiri who was leading in 10 out of the 21 local government areas that were collated at the time. It led to a string of events, including the suspension of UNISA in the state. Well, yesterday, after continuation and completion of the coalition exercise, which took place in Abuja, where it was moved to, the returning officer for the election, Mohammed Lamido, announced Governor Fintiri as winner of the election after polling over 430,000 votes. Well, helping us actually by the State Coordinator, Center for Human Rights and Accountability Network, CRAN, in the person of Mr. Franklin Isong, who joins me live now on Political Spectrum. A very good morning to you, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ramonita. Good to be with you today.
Thank you very much for joining us as well. You have followed the entirety of the 2023 elections, but from February 25 and March 18. And it's an election that has been laced with reports of irregularities and manipulation of results in several areas. Although, as it were, there's been calls for aggrieved parties to channel their grievances to court. But I wonder if in the course of covering elections, not just the 2023 polls, but previous elections in the country, have you ever come across something close to the drama? I mean, what is your take generally on what we saw in Adamawa State recently?
What we saw in Adamawa State, I have said in a sister forum or platform that is a coup against the Nigerian democracy, is a coup against our constitution, and it should not be taken lightly. Coup is not only when you carry gun. Actions stands on the head of our constitution, stands against all known rules, regulations, and norms of our democracy. That is a coup, and so it should not be taken lightly. That has never faced proof after elections, after carrying out its function, is INEC. Check the records. I have covered 7 elections conducted by INEC from 1999 to 2003 that the INEC national chairman or INEC rec faced trial. None that the INEC commissioner in any state or the INEC national chairman, is made to give account of stewardship. None that the INEC official whose duty it is to conduct the election will be made to give account of how they carry out their functions. And so INEC will just sit from somewhere and come up and request that they need 1 trillion for election. And then the money is released. And then after the election, the new government will come on board and reward the INEC officials with higher positions, higher portfolio, and that ends it. Nobody will call the INEC rec in any state, will ask the INEC chairman to come and give account as of the day after election that was almost a chaos almost happened. You saw what happened at the National Coalition Center when Gosde Rube stood up and said, we won't, and then the president came on board, no matter where to appeal, and the rest of it ends, and that ends it. At the end, July even came up to even in the last contest, he bought form and was contesting to become the country's president. And that is it. So what I'm simply saying is election where the INEC national chairman, the INEC commissioners did not exercise restraint in their actions, even despite the public outcry 2 weeks given to it by the Electoral Act, without addressing those grievances. And then when those actions were taken, the INEC will tell you, go to court. Anybody who is aggrieved should go to court. National chairman and all national commissioners, by going ahead, despite knowing fully well that his action was completely an aberration to our democracy, strange to the norms of democracy, to make a return. When he himself is a lawyer, he knows that it is not the duty of INEC rec to make a return when you have the returning officer that has been so appointed for the job. He went ahead to make a return. So I am not surprised.
All right, so we're talking to State Coordinator Kran, Franklin Asong. Looks like we do have you back, Franklin. I just wanted to take you up on one of the recent national level as far as INEC is concerned. INEC has equally been commended in certain quarters for taking the decision that they took with regards to suspending the REC, Yunus Sahari, from his role in the controversial election. So would you say INEC taking that bold step to nullify the illegally declared results by the REC was a good step in the right direction, and perhaps they should be commended? Or you feel this is just INEC trying to save face from the embarrassment of the February 25 and March 18 polls?
I think INEC nullifying the illegal return that was made by the REC in Adamawa State is not something that should be commended. It's not deserving of commendation, because the same INEC would have exercised restraint when there were complaints to the INEC result viewing portals, IREV. So if anybody will commend INEC for what I can call face saving in one state of Adamawa, I for one would never commend INEC. I will always maintain, and it is truism, that he who goes to equity set of people, and then you are trying to do justice to another set of people, that is not enough for people to say you have done justice to the people. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. The INEC chairman didn't do justice to the country when he went ahead to make a return in the presidential polls without addressing the complaints that arose from the elections. What we saw, what we could term impending loom, crisis that was looming in Adamawa State. Because even though we all know that the INEC chairman has already soiled his hands in the public court of justice, and so lacked the command or national office did with respect to Adamawa State, was simply to address or to arrest impending crisis that would have broken out in the state. Again, I think that it is high time INEC should begin to give account. INEC demanded for, and we saw what happened at the polls. So I think there is need for INEC to give account of stewardship. Now, again, the office of INEC rec and the office of who should be INEC is one that people who are appointed into those offices should be profiled, ought to have been profiling. They ought to have known the background of people appointed into such sensitive positions. That was why when President Buhari nominated Mrs. Anoche into the INEC commission, there was public outcry that she. So those who are appointed to hold offices as in INEC shouldn't be party cronies, shouldn't be loyalists. I have read the report. I have read a report where I've also read a report of where it is alleged that the INEC rec allegedly took 2 billion to compromise and did what he did in the state. All these are allegations that are coming out from the state, which I believe is subject to investigation. And so, while the officers who are currently serving to also be proved in their role in the just concluded elections in the country, because there is need for them to give account of what they have done in the last elections.
Okay, so interestingly, the role played by Dr. Yunusa Ari in all of this is arguably what most Nigerians are pretty centered on. INEC has told us they have informed the Inspector General of Police to commence investigation into his activities. In that, authorities would take a stand on whether or not Mr. Yunusa would remain as not just REC, but an INEC official going forward. There's been lots of debates as to whether or not such moves would suffice to punish him for attempting to truncate a democratic process, or are we looking at more stiffer punishment as a deterrent to others going forward?
Whatever step taking the steps, are they also cleared? Are they also cleared of similar or likelihood of that kind of actions? There are arguments in some quarters that the INEC rec in Adamawa State was simply towing the line of his mentors, who are I have said that the action of the INEC rec is a coup and should be investigated, but I do not agree that this call for investigation or proof of the rec should said it before. INEC has not lived above board. So it's like pot calling kettle black. That's just simply put. It's like pot calling kettle black. The INEC rec must have seen the way his bosses is. So you cannot turn back to say he should be arrested and prosecuted. Do you also have the integrity to question that of the rec in the state? So I think that it is not the call for the proof. The call for sanctioning of the rec shouldn't emanate from INEC, who have seen that the action of the INEC rec and that of the INEC chairman and other commissioners in the INEC, are not in line with the regulations that are laid down for our elections. And so there should be a proof of INEC officers, not just Adamawa State, should also be proved. That is what I think should be the ideal thing. So you don't treat the case of Adamawa in isolation. You should treat all holistically. There should be a complete review, a complete proof of how INEC was able to handle the just completed election, the one of the February 15, the one of the March 18 commissioners, INEC chairman, INEC rec should be proved.
Well, interestingly, I did mention about the request to the SGF to call the attention of the so-called appointing authority. Under the Constitution, refers to the president himself. He's the only one empowered to apply a provision where the resident electoral commissioner of any state can only be removed by Mr. President if the president can act on an address by a 2/3 majority of the Senate. And that's also in accordance with constitutional provision. So in the case of Mr. Yunusa Hari, we could say he has been suspended, but it will require pockets of irregularities across different quarters, including elections that saw to the re-election of some of the senators and lawmakers in question. So who's to say that most of them will want, to, toe the line of those who say, let's get Mr. Yunusa Hari out of that role as rec, so it will serve as a deterrent to others, considering we equally saw a senator like Ishaku Abu coming out to say he was very happy with the illegal decoration of Aishatu Binani as the governor-elect by the rec on Sunday. So you have a senator of the National Assembly condoning irregularities in an election.
I have not seen the law with respect to appointment, suspension, or sanction of INEC rec or INEC chairman or commissioner. But from what you have just quoted now, could be null and void. Because from what you are simply saying, the power lies with the president having received address from the National Assembly back up with two-third majority that the INEC rec or commissioner, the rec suspension, if it will hold water, if it will stand. Because it is like a judge, appointment of a judge. The INEC is seen as a judge, as an umpire. INEC commissioners are seen as judge. So the procedure of appointing a judge of a state procedure that is followed in appointment, almost the procedure that is followed in appointment INEC rec. While that of a judge is from the National Judicial Commission sent to the president, who will now to the Senate for screening, and then once the Senate clear, the person is appointed. Now, in the terms of removal of such a person, from what you are reading now, the INEC official cannot be removed from office until the Senate pass a resolution backed up by a two-third majority, forward the same to the president in an address, before the president can now act on that of the INEC rec. Doesn't require anybody to address a letter to the president or SGF for his sanction. In fact, that is why I have issue with the Commissioner of Police and the DSS director and the NLCDC commandant who went with his return, that the return that he made was unlawful return. From that point, he wouldn't have been protected. He would have lost his immunity if he had any. He would have been taken in by the law enforcement agent from that point and then be made to answer questions. But for the police, for the NLCDC, for the DSS to give him that, to cover someone who is acting contrary to the law, and you are still protecting him, you should have taken him in. After the announcement is made, you haven't known that his action was ultra virus, his action was unlawful. You should have immediately from that event arrest him and made him to answer questions. But the police, unfortunately, gave him the cover, protected him, DSS, the NLCDC. So the coup should not only center around the INEC rec, the police VP in the state, the DSS director, the NLCDC commandant, these law enforcement agencies should also be investigated.
After a conclusion of the coalition exercise yesterday by the returning officer Mohammed Mele, he polled over 430,000 votes plus to defeat Aishatu Binani of the APC. Well, let's turn our sights away from Corders Conference on issues bordering on special duties and intergovernmental affairs here in Nigeria, where the National Assembly have decried opposition to the local government autonomy bill, and they claim state houses of assemblies across the country have been solely responsible in their states. Now, one would have thought that having a local government autonomy bill in place would more or less empower the respective state house of assemblies across the country, and also the chief executive officers of the various local governments across the country. But what we've seen in recent times is stiff opposition to this bill by persons who would ordinarily have benefited from them. Would you foot by opposing this bill heads on?
I think the National Assembly, in this particular regard, deserves commendation for always making sure that the bill to make for the autonomy of local government councils in Nigeria are the governors of the various states, because this business body they call Governors Forum has never allowed the local government to have autonomy, and that has continued to enslave, to cripple the legislature and the judiciary. These arms of government, these tiers of government are critical. We are operating a three-tier system of government: the federal, the state, and local government. Only two tiers have autonomy, which is the federal and the state. Section 162 creates state local government joint accounts. When the funds of the local government is to be paid, and so before the money is disbursed from that joint account to local government, there must be a joint account between the state government officials and local government officials. That is where the mischief continuously are being carried out against under his tenure. I think he was the outgoing chairman, and in that time they have financial autonomy, and the local government system compete among themselves. What you have today is just local government councils, officials that are appointed as proxies of the state government. So they are tied to the cross string, the state government. So they are at the mercy of the state government. So those who are local government council chairmen are simply, you could have a situation where from the federation account, what is from the Federal Ministry of Finance to a local government is, for instance, 200 million to a local government council in a state. And then when the money is lodged into the joint account, at the end of the joint account meeting in the state level, when the money is to be disbursed to the local government council, how then will the government at the local government level develop? How then will they be able to do projects? How they will be able to compete among themselves? That is why you find it difficult to see a local government council embarking on any capital project. Meanwhile, their functions is marshaled out in the fourth schedule of our constitution. This evil is to give the local government councils autonomy. But when these bills get to the state assembly, because the assembly makers, the lawmakers themselves at the state level, are also cronies of the state government, they will oppose the bill. And so the bill will not get the needed two-thirds majority from the state's houses of assembly to get it passed to become a law. So it will not be killed at that level. So until we have the governors of the states who are truly people-oriented, who are truly grassroots-oriented, who believe in the grassroots development, we will continue to remain in the circle of not giving the local government councils autonomy, and they will continue.
You've rightly posited that, yes, opposition from state assemblies, most of whom are stooges of their respective state governors, has claimed that the National Assembly is a major reason why the local government autonomy bill hasn't scaled through. But if it is evident that the opposition to this bill is coming from these respective states, push through with the local government autonomy bill without having to get the consent of the respective states assemblies. If we're operating as a federal system of government, we would expect that all the tiers of government should operate independently of the other. Well, we could say this is courtesy of provisions in the 1999 Constitution that allowed for, the local government and the state government, to operate on the so-called joint accounts basis. But if we're having this level of opposition, and some people have read it would have to the development of a governance, especially at the grassroots level.
We are operating a democracy based on constitution. Simply put, our democracy is established on the foundation of our constitution without passing through the due process of it. And so our constitution has stipulated or has stipulated the procedure of amending it. For you to amend the constitution, it has also clearly spelled out the procedure you will follow. And some of them must be passed by at least 2/3 majority of the states of the federation. And so even when you have less number, and in this case you just need 23 states is what you need. So even if you have 22 states, the bill to amend the constitution will fail. So you need to make sure you have 23 states of the federation given not to the bill before you can now amend the constitution to accommodate the new areas. And so when you are sending the bill to the assemblies in the state, you must also forward the areas you intend to amend. And so 10 amendments, for instance, you want to amend the area that creates revenue allocation, the area that talks about local government autonomy, talks about the judiciary autonomy, talks about state police, talks about federal structure, and the rest. You must be able to list out these items by items as you want to do them. And then you will now forward them to the assemblies in the states. That will not, some states will now say, okay, out of these 10 items that you have forwarded to us, we are taking 7 of them, and we okay 7, and we reject 3 of them. Okay, we pass 9 of them, we reject this 1. That is what has happened. So for you to amend our constitution, it must not be done without the assemblies in the state being carried along and without getting the 2/3 majority of the state assemblies. Is for the assembly, is for the National Assembly, is for the state assemblies to be, to be lobbied, is to lobby the governors who control the state assemblies, is to lobby the House of Assemblies to ensure that the House of Assembly agrees with the National Assembly on these bills before they are passed. So you must be able to get the governors of the state who controls the assembly of the state to accept that these particular items should be passed. And then when that is done, when you are able to lobby the governor and the governor see the reason of accepting that this particular amendment be made, otherwise you will see where in most cases when the speakers or the assembly go against the wishes of their governors, the speaker of the assembly get backlash. They could be impeached. There could be change of leadership in the assembly, sponsored by the governors of the state, because the governors will see them as not being loyal, as not playing the beat of the governors of the state. And so you have that crisis of leadership that will lead to a change of leadership. And so because no speaker will want to be removed, so the speaker will play, they don't have autonomy. Even when the autonomy bill was sponsored and passed, the governors refused to, release funds to fund the autonomy, to fund the assemblies. Even when the constitution has given clear provisions that the funds for the judiciary, the funds for the legislature should come from a first line charge of the state. When it gets to the state level, the governors will still refuse to comply with it. So you have these issues
that allows the state governments to feed off from local government allocation. It's been 42 years since the local government reforms were initiated, dating back to 1976. And up until now, we still cannot have a local government that is autonomous. And so it appears the aims of the reforms are yet to be achieved. Well, if the status quo is allowed to continue, and as you said, it will require some sort of constitutional amendment before the National Assembly could have its way. Do you think that the state governments will continue to feed off from local government allocation? It's been 42 years since the local government reforms were initiated, dating back to 1976. And up until now, we still cannot have a local government that is autonomous. And so it appears the aims of the reforms are yet to be achieved. Well, if the status quo is allowed to continue, and as you said, it will require some sort of constitutional amendment before the National Assembly could have its way. in ensuring that this bill sees the light of the day. But until that happens, isn't it the federal government does send to each state as allocation and what is meant for the local government in that chunk? Yes, we know it's still within the purview of the state governors to decide what they want to do with the money as it comes into their joint account. But surely we know the figures as appropriated by FARC, and they usually give us how much comes to the state and just how much is given to the local governments themselves.
You see, in 2000 Financial Intelligence Bureau, a unit in the EFCC called NFIU, should monitor the funds of local government in the state. That all the funds of the local government should be that are meant for local government can be accessed by local government chairmen. I still remember the Algon going to court to challenge the action of the federal government and the NFIU, saying that it is the duty of the state governors to control, to begin to group into the account of the local government. And so certain benchmark was, council chairman went to court to question the authority of the president through the NFIU to monitor their funds and to guide how their funds are, being disbursed. And that is where we are. And they went to court, and I think in 2022, the court came up with a ruling invalidating the NFIU and voiding that policy. So even those that need this help, the council chairmen, are not even helping matters. They are the ones that will first go to court and say they don't want to be rescued. If they did not go to court, I think by now they would have been controlling their funds. But they went to court to challenge it. And then that boils down to the issue of those who are local government chairmen. How are they appointed? How did they emerge? That's the point. They emerge by way of somebody just sit somewhere and saying, you become chairman, you become councillor. They feel it, they see it as a favor. They see it as opportunity to also, reward, loyalty, to show loyalty to the person who has appointed them. So that is where we are. We are living at the death. The council chairmen are living like some council chairmen only report to their council headquarters only when the allocation is available. They only go take the fund, the allocation, go there and pay salaries in most cases, or do a few things and return back to the state headquarters because they have nothing to do. Precarious situation. We are living in a very worrisome state. That is why you see a high rate of underdevelopment, high rate of crime at the grassroots level, and high rate of underdevelopment. And you continue to have this until we have governors, I have said before, who truly believe in development. Until we have governors who will see the need to allow the local government to have control of their funds.
Ability of granting or to grant local government autonomy would lead to, several vices preventing, the growth of democracy in such areas, or allowing people of those localities to enjoy the dividends of democracy, such as inadequate planning, weak policy execution, insufficient revenue, corruption, as well as mismanagement, or lack of adequate power altogether. Going forward now, what would you suggest should be done in the meantime? While, of course, we know the local governments are still getting whatever funds made available to them from their respective state governors, but to allow our state lawmakers and the local government authorities to see the need to allow for an autonomy for the local government, so it could equally see to the growth of democracy at the grassroots level. Who should begin holding or having these talks?
Of the president, the powers of the state governors away from them in the constitution. For instance, my group have repeatedly kicked against the existence of state electoral commissions, CX. We have called for a deletion of the CX in our constitution, because where we are today is created by CX. CX are tied to the April springs of the state governments in the various states. So the CX are the ones that are going to do elections that will bring in people that will be council chairmen. So whoever the state governors will want are the ones that the CX will announce as the ones who have won contest, where you will have other political parties also winning the local government councils. So out of say 20 local government council in the state, you have the parties in the state sharing challenge the governors for tampering on their funds. And then they will demand for their funds to be given to them. The president also have a role. Under President Olusegun Obasanjo, he normally holds a quarterly review meeting with the 774 local government council chairmen in Abuja, where he interfaces with them. Yeah, what have you done with your council fund? They will give report directly to the president and explaining how they have used the funds given to them. And then they will give their own challenges and what they need the president to do. That is why we now had the Shopee fund that was released to the local government councils, because the president was able to communicate with them to know their challenges and be able to direct the Ministry of Rural Development to go into the rural areas to, begin to do rural electrification and road construction and the rest. So going forward, the principles are established in our constitution. The president should have interface with the council chairman. There should be a meeting between the president and the local government chairman, as was done by the past president. And then when that is done, right, and then we review our constitution and delete CX and take the powers of CX and give it to INEC, and then change the way the INEC is appointed. The INEC commissioners are appointed, making it such that no one man can appoint the INEC commissioners, like we are coming out to support the action of the INEC rec, knowing that the INEC, for the INEC rec can be sacked, it must come from the Senate, and being that it will therefore become difficult for the INEC rec to be sacked, because the party that the INEC rec work in favor of controls the Senate. So that is the point. So we are now playing partisan politics. So for us to move out to delete joint accounts, to delete CX in the constitution, and then give direct access of local government funds to the local government chairman. When this is done, you will be having the local government system working, and improvement will take place at the local government
quarters, that allowing a local government system with constitutional powers to deal directly with the federal government would amount to a violation of the sovereignty of state governments in the country, or to a large extent render the states completely irrelevant in the federating units, as is the system.
A very faulty constitution. We pick what we want to pick from the constitution and leave what we don't want to use, what we don't want to pick. We are operating three-tier system, has its own legislature. It makes it independent. So you wouldn't have the state government taking her own budget to the Senate for approval. You wouldn't have the federal government taking their budget to the state government for approval. You wouldn't have the local government system chairman taking independence. That is what ought to be. And so the way the state government has access to the president, has access to the federal structure, is the same way the local government system, the chairman should have access to the state government fund, tier of government. The same way the constitution has listed the state that we have in the country. In the same way, it has also listed the number of local government councils that we have. It's based on the function of the local government and based on the function of the state government, and as well as the function of the federal government. So these are independent tier of government. So anybody who believes that for the council chairman to have access to federal government, to have access to federal government loan, have access to federal government funding, will deplete. Is simply working against our democracy, is working against the tenet of our constitution, is working against what the constitution, what our laws stipulate. So the best way out, I have maintained here, is for us, local government has autonomy, is a clear fact, because the local government is a tier of government. It has its own councillors who constitute as legislatures. For the state governor to tamper on funds of the state government, that fund must be appropriated and passed by the House of Assembly. For the president to tamper on the funds and make expenditure, it must be cleared by the National Assembly. That is what it is. So how then do you now? I'm saying that we are operating a very faulty constitution, and then because of our nature as human and undemocratic human as we are, we choose to pick what we want to pick for our constitution to implement, and leave what we think, if we pick to implement, will improve on our grassroots democracy.
Interesting thoughts indeed. We're just going to have to hold it right there, but we have to say thank you so very, very much for joining us today, Mr. Franklin Isong, and giving us expert analysis on all of these issues. Thanks for joining us today. An accountability network CRAN here in Akwa Ibom State. To welcome Franklin Isong talking to us, amongst other things, the outcry by the National Assembly, the state governors and the stooges in the State House of Assemblies across the country are responsible for the inability of the local government autonomy bill to see the light of the day. Plus, earlier on, we had our attention well focused on the aftermath of the just concluded Anambra gubernatorial rerun election, where Governor Fintiri of the People's by the now suspended wreck of Adamawa in the state, Hudu Yunusa Ari. Well, how far will INEC go with the claims that he has been reported to the IGP for investigation and prosecution? And will this go a long way, or to an extent, in re-imbibing the confidence lost in INEC by the electorate after the first two exercises we saw on February 25 and March 18? The jury is still out on this, but that's the far we can go on today's edition of Political Spectrum. Many thanks indeed. If you can, Blood in the Cam is up next with Business 360. But from me, Raymond Ita, and the rest of the crew, thanks for watching. Bye for now.